just in case. I peep a lot of shit, I prefer to observe, I'm never following a...
Me and B-Rob are super close. Lockers right next to each other, so I get to see him. I get to be around him all the time, and then obviously on the field. But B-Rob's someone I've been cool with since I first got here. Someone who's from Tuscaloosa, who has been in the program for a while. And when I first got here, he was someone who was always super cool with me. Someone who was super welcoming when I was just a freshman. That means a lot to me. For him, last year being here as long as he did, he didn't have to go out of his way to make sure I was good and to look out for me as just a freshman. But he made a priority to do that. And that's always meant a lot for me, not just in football, but in life.
It means everything is so much fun. I have to give those guys a lot of credit because they give me so much energy when I watch them play. Before the game, I swear I always say to myself, I said, your brother's out there with you. Look at Phil, he right there beside you. Look at DJ, he right there beside you. Look at Dallas, he right there beside you. So we straight no matter what. And that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence too.
You're listening to Bama Brigade on the Sports Flash Media Network.
Welcome into our Wednesday, October 26th edition of the Sports Flash Media Network. We've got Bama Brigade. Tonight's show will be discussing Week 9 of college football. I'm joined by my co-hosts Tyler Shibich and Josh Clackler. Tyler, how are you doing?
Good. I was messing with my camera right before we started, so that's why I was kind of like, oh, but we're good. We're all here. It's been a bit.
Yeah, Clack, I'm sorry, but I had to give you your full name on here. Everybody else has got their full names. How you doing?
Good. I'm great. I missed last week, so I couldn't get to point out to Joe how bad he picked the Bama-Tennessee game. But anyway, that's beside the point. He was wrong as usual. But
we kind of shot ourselves in the foot.
You're right. You're definitely right. But anyway, well, that's a story for another day.
No, I'll give you your props. I thought our defense would be a lot better. I know offensively we could score and they could score, but I didn't think that our defense would completely fall apart at the seams. But that's a Pete Golding defense for you.
Well, just a classic. Seems like a classic Bama loss. Every time we lose, it's some shootout. If we lose, the other team's going to have at least 40 to 50 points every time, except the Georgia game. But anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. Before we, what did you say?
I said I'm ready for some football this weekend.
Yeah, me too. I had the pleasure last weekend of spontaneously going to the Bama game. As you can see my jersey in the background. It's very wrinkled. There's probably still some beer on it, some sort of stains. I don't know. But at like 3:00 in the afternoon, one of our good friends texted me and my girlfriend and was like, "Hey, we have 2 free tickets to the game. Like, do you guys want to come?" And bonus to living in Prattville is I'm not too far away from Tuscaloosa, so we just hopped in the car and drove to the game. So that was really cool. I didn't think I get to experience Bryant-Denny Stadium this year. So atmosphere is electric. I will say that the lights didn't work, and I was kind of disappointed in that.
The lights don't work. Like how? Are we surprised?
Well, my sources are telling me that Andrew Terry was in the stadium. So.
That's where I was going next.
No. But yeah, no, it was still an electric environment, and trying to maybe make it out to the last game of the year. I think they play Austin P in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, but less about me, more about the show. We'll dive into the game. I did want to talk about something that we kind of talked about a little bit last week with Alabama received a lot of backlash this past weekend for playing Jermaine Burton, despite the video that I'm sure we all saw that circulated of him. Do you guys have any issue with Saban playing Burton? I know he backed up this decision.
Ultimately, in my opinion, would I have played him? No. But ultimately, I think Nick Saban knows better than anybody the decision that needs to be made. And, I've heard Nick Saban say this multiple times. You can't let what one mistake does define somebody. He's talked about that when he was, I think with somebody at Michigan State who is I think he said he's now ahead of a Fortune 500 company. You can't let one mistake define the guy. And like Nick Saban said, we're not going to go into what happened. We handled it. And I think I trust Nick Saban. He's always been a class act guy. I think he handled it how he thought it was best. And I'm going to trust that he did what, should have been done. I mean, what he did was wrong. What Jim Rainbow did was wrong. We all know that. But I'm going to trust that Nick Saban handled it how he saw fit and did the right thing.
Yeah. Basically how I feel. Like, definitely probably wouldn't have played him myself, but I think that anyone that's making a huge deal out of it, especially if Alabama actually did do like an internal investigation, stuff like they said, and looked into it themselves. Anyone that's just making a big deal out of it just wants to pile on the Alabama hate while they can. Because that's a trend I know. Alabama loses in the next couple of weeks. Like, the Alabama hate's even more so than it normally is. Well, I saw someone allege that, I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Saban beat Miss Terry. I'm like, what is this just ridiculous?
I saw that too.
Like, that was the dumbest tweet I've ever seen.
The worst thing that could happen to college football is Tennessee beating us, because the Tennessee fans have crawled out of their dark misery. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen them on Twitter, but they are all over. I tweeted, like, Alabama kind of just beat themselves. Like, I feel good if we played Tennessee again in neutral site, and I wasn't expecting anyone to say anything, but I had Tennessee fans all up in my mentions, just saying the most ignorant things.
Every fan base has those. I mean,
yeah,
it's I think we're the same way sometimes when we beat somebody, and I think every fan base gets a little giddy and gets a little.
I'll disagree with you there. I think we are I guess kind of. Alabama, we've talked about this a lot on the show. Alabama is the standard. So, when Alabama has a big win, we're going to celebrate. We're going to say things on Twitter. But, it's more of a big deal. We're the team that gets upset. We're not the team that typically does the upset. So you can expect after a loss like that for, opposing fans to run their mouths as much.
Every team's going to do that when they beat Bama. It's not just Tennessee. But, yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Going back to the Burton thing before we kind of move on, it is interesting because it's not like Burton's his star player. I mean, he's a guy that'll have like 2 or 3 catches for 45 yards. So a lot of people were like, oh, classic, starter gets to play. But it's not like he's a star player. So I just thought that was interesting as well. It's not like Alabama was being sleazy.
Well, one thing, too, is do you think that part of the Burton's frustration was because he was expecting to be a star this year, right? Like, when he transferred from Georgia, everyone thought, wide receiver 1 right away. Big numbers guy, he's going to be our next JMO. And he's largely been overshadowed by some of the other receivers. Shoot, even Jahmyr Gibbs has been more impressive as a wide receiver than him.
I think that's a good thing, though. I was kind of worried when I thought we were going to have to rely on Georgia's third best offensive weapon last year, 34th. So,
to be fair, though, with Brock Bowers and, whoever else on the team, he's going to
Lad McConkey.
Yeah, Lad McConkey.
George Pickens, but, I mean, he didn't really play much.
Yeah, I wasn't counting him because he was hurt. But
on the topic of receivers, we finally had a Tyler Harrell sighting. Clap it up, everybody.
He made a nice snag.
Yeah, 1 catch for 12 yards. Bama apparently is rumored to be trying to use Harrell a lot more going forward. And then also JoJo Earl had 3 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown. These are 2 players that we've sort of been waiting all year to see make an impact. Both guys were injured. Earl had a 42-yard catch, I believe, the following week or the previous week against Tennessee. So he's become very involved, and it was nice to see Harrell get on the field as well. So what do you guys think about these 2 guys down the stretch for us?
I think that Harrell might be, maybe it's just, fan blind optimism, but I think he might be the thing that helps unlock the offense a lot. I mean, you saw it last year, and you'll see it with every offense. Shoot, I won't even say you saw it last year. You see it with every offense in the NFL, in college football. If you have a speedy guy that can stretch your field, it opens up your playbook so much more. And having a guy like that, I mean, I know they wanted Isaiah Bond to be that. I think Isaiah Bond,
he showed flashes.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say he has the potential to be that next year, but I think that he's not quite there. Although he has impressed. Like, he started off the season with a bunch of drops. Sorry, this is kind of a tangent about Isaiah Bond, and I was kind of down on him, but he was the opposite of Ajay Hall, right? He kept working. Nick Saban praised him a bunch. He kept seeing the field, and he pulled it together. So good for him. But yeah, I think that Harrell opens up a new dynamic and allows like Bryce Young's lob threats right now are Jermaine Burton and like who else?
Kobe Prentice.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And
I always forget about Kobe Prentice.
Isaiah Bond has had a few deep balls this year, but I agree with what Tyler said. I think if my problem is, are we going to use him right? I mean, I've always like my one thing. I'm going to go out hot take here. When Bill O'Brien is good, Bill O'Brien can be good. There are times when he is good, but when he's good, he decides to get out of it. He's like, I've never seen a coach who finds what's working. We can have 2 or 3 absolutely beautiful drives in a row, and then we're going to change the offense up. Like, what the hell are you doing when something works perfectly? You change it up. That's his problem.
I think it's the NFL blood in him. Like we were talking about this before the show, how mind-blowing it is to watch an NFL game with the way their play calling works. They'll have a 10-point lead, and then it'll shrink to like a 3-point lead just because you go away from what's been working and you get conservative with your play calling because you're worried about making mistakes. You have to be aggressive. And I think this Alabama offense this year needs to be aggressive. And we've seen it at times, Bill O'Brien, quote unquote, be in his bag. And we've seen times where he's just flat out horrible when it comes to play calling. So I think
I agree.
If Bill O'Brien can consistently call reasonable plays, I don't expect plays to be perfect. Especially, you have a lot of these young receivers kind of starting to come into their own. And hopefully, the emergence of Harrell and Earl will help the offense a lot more. I think it will.
If we see the offense we saw against Tennessee, if we see that every game from here on out, we win a natty.
But also, Tennessee's defense, I mean, we were supposed to put up a lot of points.
I do think the defense can get it. I do think the defense showed with, and we're fixing to get into this, with Eli Ricks out there, the defense looked like the Bama defense. Eli Ricks aside, DeMarco Hellams really learned from that last game. We saw him how he was acting at the end of the game when we gave up that touchdown. The defense learned. If the offense can get it together and stay consistent, we're fine. I think we beat Tennessee again. I think we can beat Georgia. I think we can beat Ohio State. We can sure as hell beat Clemson because they're not even a top 10, top 20 team, if you ask me. But it's just all about consistency. If the offense will stay consistent, we're fine, but they can't. They haven't shown they can do it.
No, yeah, and I've said this all year. I said it last year. I probably said it the year before. My only concern with this team, it's not Bryce Young. It's not a specific player. It's the coaching, the play calling, offensive and defensive. Offensively, like we said, Bill O'Brien has shown this year that he can be capable of calling solid plays, and then kind of transitioning into the defensive side.
Hold on, Joe. I want to ask y'all something really quick. Something that really comes to mind. I'm going to get both of y'all's opinion on. Go back and look at that first touchdown against Mississippi State. That play probably took 12 to 15 seconds. Why is it taking place for so long to develop? That's a concern for me. That's not on Bill O'Brien. That's on the receivers. Why are our plays taking so long to develop?
I mean, I think, well, it's kind of a flip side. Our offensive line is able to block for that extended period of time. It makes me happy because early in the year, especially third game against Texas, our offensive line did not look good. So positive there being the offensive line be able to block, but I think some of it is the receivers, like I've said earlier, coming into their own, and then some of it is schematically, you have to scheme guys open. We talked about that earlier, a couple weeks ago. You have to, if these guys aren't able to get open, you have to find creative ways to, run double crossers and send somebody out in the flat. Like, just get creative with it.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's the big concern all year for me watching it is Bryce Young makes some great heroic plays, but should he have to? I think that's what kind of bothers me is like every single touchdown seems to be off of Bryce Young heroic run around and scramble for 30
saving
seconds.
Bill O'Brien's ass.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think he should have to make like a spectacular play. There should be plays where there are guys open, but they're just almost are never.
We do typically do go on slant routes and stuff. Jermaine Burton on a slant route. We do typically run those very well, but again, we don't run what works. We run what doesn't work until it works. because
Right.
we have Will Bryant, and we're going to make something work. You know, like Jahmyr Gibbs was not getting anything. One thing I've noticed, like Jahmyr Gibbs could not run to the left side on Saturday night. What do we keep doing? We keep running off the left side. We keep running. We keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting it to work again, and it doesn't. That's the problem.
It's like Tyler, like this Mike Zimmer, watching Mike Zimmer coach a football game. So,
Yep. The bad man is gone.
thank God for y'all. Something that made me very happy as I was sitting in the stadium, as I heard that Eli Ricks was announced as starter, I knew that we were in for a good old defensive day. So Eli Ricks, finally, I've been saying it since the dawn of time. I don't care if he's struggling in practice. He's a gamer. You have to get him on the field. Former All-American, 5-star player. You have to get talent on the field. And what happened when we got talent on the field? He balled out. What did you guys think of Rick's performance? I know Twitter was just exploding. He was named to the Chuck Bednarik Award Player of the Week. 10 targets, 1 reception for 19 yards, and 5 forced incompletions.
Very good performance from him. I was really glad to see him come in and have a really good. Heaven only knows we needed it. You know, they were throwing at him. They thought they could pick on him. He was having none of it. So I hope that, you know, sometimes we have players who have really good games and then go off. I hope that's not the case. I hope that, especially look, we're going in 2 weeks. I hope that, you know, he's out for blood and comes out, plays just as he did the other night. But I'm hoping that we can just get the same. That's all I'm asking, is get the same. I don't care why he wasn't playing before. I just want this to keep going.
I don't want to put words in Clack's mouth, but I think this is the way he feels too, because we were talking about it a bunch. But I do think that Ricks has had, you know, a great game, and I'm really hope he plays really well coming forward. But I think that you don't play a guy like that without a reason for not playing them, right? Like everyone's piling on, oh, why has he been playing all year? To me, like, especially with how good he was and how much we would have needed something like that against Tennessee, there had to have been some reason. Either he wasn't grasping the playbook, he wasn't bought in, he wasn't practicing well, whatever. But like, obviously he's incredibly talented, so that's not the thing keeping him off the field. But I do hope that whatever, you know, he seemed to have figured it out, I hope that continues, and I hope that he balls out for the rest of the season.
Unless it's injury related or academics related, even if it's schematically, if he's not understanding the playbook, you have to get him on the field. I mean, Alabama's defense has, quote unquote, a challenging scheme. We'll make it simple, you know, get him on the field. And he got on the field somehow. I don't know how he was able to get on the field Saturday. They decided to play him. Finally, it only took giving up, 5 touchdowns on go routes to Tennessee last week.
I agree.
This is a sketchy thing to me. After a performance like we had against Tennessee, they're just willing to say, screw it, let's put Ricks out there the following week.
Here's the thing.
That's why it makes me think that it wasn't like they were just didn't want to play him, because I think that how the defensive backs played in the Tennessee game kind of forced their hand. They knew they had to use this treasure that was just sitting on the bench.
I agree, Joe, but I also think that here's the thing. You don't, let's look at this from an offensive perspective. You don't change the system just because one guy doesn't understand it. One thing I have in talking to people, I agree. Pete Golding's system is very, very complicated. I think that's one of the defense struggles. It's not because of lack of talent. It's not a lack of whatever. It's because they don't grasp the concepts. So I do agree with what you said. I think simplifying the defense in a way is the right thing, but at the same time, you can't change the defense just because one player doesn't understand it. And you don't want to go out there and one player that doesn't understand the defense he misses assignment and leaves somebody wide open. You're running a big risk. Maybe he just didn't understand the schemes and it finally just kind of clicked after that long. Or, maybe like you said, maybe it just got to a point where like, we've got to have him out here because what we're doing wasn't working. Malachi Moore has not been good this year. Until DeMarco Hellams has been very
Malachi Moore has just completely fallen off. That'll forever be one of the biggest mysteries for me.
It is. Injury. I think an injury, but I mean, you look at him like
that was 2 years ago, wasn't
it? The Tennessee game. Like the Tennessee game, he was like literally walking down the sideline. Like Jalen Hyatt's going. I mean, he's like wasn't even trying to catch him. Like, So we need somebody. We need that with that. What was it that Nick Saban said they were? What was the reference he made the other day about the defense? Or something he said they were like
guys that hate losing more than they like winning. Did he say that?
It was guys that hate some.
I don't know.
Basically, the hateful competitors. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Like Eli Riggs is that. Even though he's not understanding the system, that is what Eli Riggs is. He wants to win. And I think, I hate to agree with Joe, but I'm kind of tending to go on Joe's side on this one because when you need him out there. You need him, even if he doesn't understand the systems. You need somebody out there. You can't. I mean, heaven only knows we play Tennessee again. We've got Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. I mean, Jalen Hyatt's getting himself into the Heisman race right now. Heaven only knows. You don't need that again.
Throw a touchdown to one receiver on each drive, though. So if we're already giving up a touchdown every time, Cedric Tillman does not matter.
I mean, I do think you go back to the thing that, like, our defense has got to be ready. Like, they were not ready for this. I mean, they basically admitted it. Where does that fall back on? Because we know somebody like Eli Riggs was ready. Eli Riggs would have been great in that game. He was ready.
I'm not even like if Riggs had played. I'm not saying Tennessee's offense is really explosive, one of the best in the country. So we're not saying that Eli Riggs in the Tennessee game wouldn't have made a couple mistakes. I'm sure he would have made some mistakes, but I think overall, I trust Eli Riggs a lot more in that game than some of these other cornerbacks that we've had. I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry's been good. Terry Arnold, these guys have shown flashes, but I mean, give me Riggs and McKinstry. I mean, that should have been the starting two from the get-go, and that's why I think that's one of the better duos in the country.
I'm not going to say they should have been. I'm going to trust that Nick Saban had a reason. However, now
I would love to know this reason, though. It's keeping me up at night.
I would too. Back is up, but now back's against the wall. There's no more playing if you don't practice, whatever. You need the best 22 guys on the field every single play. Your back's against the wall now.
The best 11 on the field. They can't play 22 at once.
That's what I meant. The best 11 on each side.
No, yeah, and I agree. And we talked about Tyler Harrell and JoJo Earl and Eli Ricks. My question to you guys is, are we undervaluing those three players alone down the stretch for the next couple weeks? We got to go into Baton Rouge at night. LSU offenses look good this year, and then we go at Ole Miss. And then obviously, assuming those two games go well, SEC championship, like, are these three guys going to be difference makers for us?
I think, and it sucks as an answer, right? But I think the answer is you can't tell, because sometimes, especially with guys that transfer in like Tyler Harrell, you just do not know if he's going to make a big impact, if he's going to be a JMO, or if he's going to be more like a Jermaine Burton kind of
Here's the thing I've noticed. I'm going to throw a basketball reference in here. This team is bipolar, just like basketball was last year. We always was bipolar basketball last year. It's the same with football this year. It's like some games we play, we can absolutely destroy the crap out of anybody. And the next game we look absolutely dead in the water. I don't know what it is. It's just I think even Nick Saban has talked about this. Your practice dictates how you play. If we have a bad week in practice, and even Nick Saban, he will tell you when we have a bad week at practice, he'll tell you in the press conference. When he says that, you look out, because it may be a bad week, but when he comes out 95% of the time, when we're looking good in practice and he's smiling and happy, we're fixing to beat the crap out of somebody.
But didn't he say that after the Tennessee practice or too? He was
we looked that's really just coach speak.
At the same time, we did play good against Tennessee on offense, and we did kick ourselves in the foot. But
okay, Greg Olson.
But
that goes back to coaching, though. Players are the ones in the field, but it goes. You have to set your players up for success.
What I don't understand about this team is it's not a talent issue. It's ultimately not a coaching issue. It's a mental issue. It's about.
Did we not make the same mental mistakes last year, though?
We did.
Something happens 2 years in a row.
It's the last 2 years. It has been a mental issue because we've seen how great they can be, but we have seen how terrible they can be.
So 2 years in a row, it's just like you have players on your team that mentally aren't
that's
strong.
how it goes. You have a class that comes in. You say you have a freshman class that comes in. By the time they're juniors, they're typically going to be starting. You don't typically.
But whose job is it to get them mentally ready?
You can't.
It's the coach's job.
Yes, it's the coach's
and
job.
Two of those problems from last year, it's not like
Joe, but at the same time, you can't.
We don't have Billingsley and we don't have Aji Hall still sitting around this team. I mean,
but you keep referencing last year as if we weren't tied going into like the third quarter of the national championship game.
But go back to the LSU game. I mean, there was plenty of games and instances last year where
it literally doesn't matter because we made the Natty. Like,
you're going to have the bigger picture though.
The bigger picture of last second place in all of college football. If I will gladly take that again this year if we have the same issues.
I agree, but here's what I'm saying:
the issues from last year are boiling over into this year, and
I agree with this
every game,
dude,
every single game.
Joe, what I'm saying is that. Yes, maybe there's a few leaders on the team that kind of came in last year that aren't good, and it's still coming over this year. You can't change everybody. Like Nick Saban is the best coach of all time. You can't expect him to change the mindset and the mentality of everybody. You're still going to have those issues. It's just like Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a great quarterback. What does he always struggle with? Sliding. I don't care if he worked for somebody for 2 million years. He's not going to get better about that. People have things that they're not going to get better at. It's going to carry over.
I'm not sitting here pinpointing like player deficiencies and getting mad about them. I'm getting mad about 17 penalties for 163 yards. How many penalties do we have in the Texas game? I'm getting mad about the fundamental mistakes that this team's made the last 2 years.
Okay, but like how many did we have against Ole Miss?
You mean Mississippi State?
Yeah, sorry, Mississippi State.
Okay,
it was a better game.
30 yards or something.
Okay, I'm gonna go on Joe's side on this one because I think it's a thing we struggle with on the road.
And then wait, hold on.
For sure.
What is also? I've seen this in the press the last 2 weeks. I don't know if it's real. It just sounds like something that could really be made up. What is the deal with like this anxiety thing? Like these players are feeling anxiety in the big games.
Okay, I feel like every player feels anxiety. It's just not something
I know,
but
to talk about. Why? Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, obviously, I'm advocating mental health, anxiety. I'm not taking anything away from that, but at the same time, that ties into like the coaching, the discipline. Like, why are these players not prepared for these games?
Players are lying if they say that they don't feel any sort of anxiety going into a 3 versus 6. Like,
I know, but is it like how you guys have played sports, right? So you're anxious for a big game, but are they anxious because of the big game, or are they anxious because like they don't feel prepared and they're scared?
I was a bench warmer and never played, and I was anxious going into every game. So
like I'm not gonna go down a mental health rabbit trail because I think we all know how real mental health is.
Yeah, no, and I said, I don't want
to. If one player says they're struggling with it, I totally understand that. That is the most understandable thing. But the whole team struggling with it, to me, that's
a red flag.
Yeah, it is. If it's just like one player saying, hey, I'm having issues, that happens to the literal best of players. I understand. I respect it. But when the whole team is having it, to me, I feel like what caused it and what caused it to bleed over to everyone else, I do think that's a red flag.
But how
can you blame – you can't blame what a player thinks. You can't blame that on a coach. Pete Golding was ass against Tennessee. But you can't.
He was ass against Texas. He was ass against.
Dude, we held Texas in 19 points.
Yeah, come on, dude. It's just disingenuous.
Overall,
like all season, the Pete Golding hate, besides the Tennessee game, has been so disingenuous.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, the Tennessee game to me is a fireable offense because you gave up more points than you've given up in 110 years. But
yeah,
it's ultimately you have to look for reasons beyond Pete Golding to blame it because his schemes were god awful in that game, leaving Jalen Hyatt wide open every freaking time. But there is other reasons we lost that game other than Pete Golding.
I'm not putting the blame solely on him, but we've kind of just gone off a tangent with this. Like, I will continue to say not every single one of, but the penalties, the anxiety, the giving up touchdowns, the bad play calling, all kind of comes back to one thing. and it's coaching. I'm not questioning Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban's the GOAT. Nick Saban's awesome. But I'm questioning the coordinators and the schemes that they're calling. I think it all
I agree with that.
comes back to that for me.
That is
I can agree
sorry.
with that.
I do want to say though, I think that is one question I do have. The only gripe I have with Nick Saban, I think, in the whole world, is that he doesn't impose more of his will over the coordinators at times. I think sometimes he's too hands off.
I think he's become a lot more passive with. I mean, we're used to seeing Nick Saban
like scream at Lane Kiffin.
There's been a couple times this year that he's done it, but
I think he's.
I would rather he just get on their ass. I mean, these are two guys that have.
Brian is in the booth, not on
yeah.
the field.
Well, and then that's skilled players too. I brought this up to Clack last time we were doing a college show. How much of the undisciplined, how much do you think of the anxiety is because Bryce Young and Will Anderson are great leaders, right? And they're great players, but they're not get in your face, like hold you accountable type leaders, right? Alabama's always had one of those guys, right? A high energy, like kind of yell at you when you mess up.
I wonder if I said this. I'm kind of starting to agree with it. I like my offensive coordinator on the field in a way. I totally get the points of being in the booth. But I like my guy on the field where he's like there to coach me up and be like, "Hey, this is what you fucked up. This is what you did wrong." You know,
I don't buy the notion that you can see more up there.
Okay.
I mean,
I think if you have an offensive head coach in the booth is fine. But if your head coach isn't the one calling the plays, he should be down on the field, like with the head coach.
Okay, all due respect to Nick Saban, I don't want Nick Saban calling plays. I
yeah.
feel like
I was just thinking more like you look at like Sean McDermott, for example,
right.
Or like Kevin O'Connell. I watch him every week. Wes Phillips is up in the booth because Kevin O'Connell calls all the plays, or like Sean McDermott calls the plays. So.
I think coaches being on the field is a lot less common than it used to be. So maybe that's part of the reason why. But I think it's kind of a cop out, in my opinion, for Bill O'Brien to just be like hiding up there in the booth while Nick Saban
with his backwards ball cap last week too.
Anyway, so
I'm glad I didn't see that. That would have pissed me off.
The game.
We are at
I can see him.
And we have 10 games to pick.
That's fair. Oh, but one last thing. Sorry, I did say that the game got so like one-sided last week. You guys have pulled up the game, but they brought Mississippi State's mascot to the booth, like the dog, and the dog was just like on it. They got a chair for it. And was
their dog is cute. Their dog is cute.
I know, but it was just funny because that's how like they were literally talking to the dog's handler on like live television.
The dog is cuter than Georgia's dog. Anyway.
Right, Olga's definitely cuter. But anyway.
Okay, no way. Anyway, we got one of Joe's favorite teams here, Penn State, hosting Ohio State. I know Joe's going to go on some rant about how Penn State's so good. Joe, you've been talking on Twitter about how this game's not at night.
I don't understand.
Let's just hear it.
Maybe this is just me, but the Big Ten, I think the Big Ten and the SEC, you could say, are probably the two best conferences or most well-known. They have the best matchups, in my opinion. Would you guys say that for the most part?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when the Big Ten decided that they're going to do this Fox noon kickoff, or Big Noon kickoffs, what they call it, I think it was this year is the first year they do it. I could be wrong.
I think they did it last year too.
They removed a lot of these games like Penn State versus Ohio State, right? This is a game that if Big Noon kickoff didn't exist, it would be the 7:00 game. Like it would be the game of the night. We'd be talking about it all day. It would be an awesome game. But because Big Noon kickoff exists, you're seeing a lot of these bigger Big Ten games be played at 11 a.m. my time and noon Eastern time, which to me is just takes a lot of the excitement out of the game. I mean, these fans are still going to be there. The stadium's going to be packed in Happy Valley. But can you imagine a whiteout game at 7:00 against Ohio State? I mean, that would just be an electric environment. I mean, I've been to a whiteout game at 7:00. It's not necessarily like about like a difference, like, you know, who, if you think this game's going to be closer, if you don't think. I just think for the sport of college football, you got to play this game at night in prime time.
And even more so for the fans. Like, that's just something like, you know,
have all day build up
of Ohio State winning by like 30 points.
I agree. I agree with what y'all are saying, but I also don't think it makes that big of a difference. Penn State is not going to beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my rebuttal with that. I got a little topic to bring up here. So the last time Penn State beat Ohio State at home, the previous week they had gotten blown out by Michigan. With that being said, I'm not going to sit here and say that I expect Penn State to win this game. I think if this game is being played at night and if Penn State had, like Alabama, had an offensive coordinator that was worth a damn, they could potentially win this game. But I don't think that any of those things are going to happen. So I'll take Penn State. I'll take them to cover the spread. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but I'll take them to cover. 15.5, I think, is a lot of points. And I think Ohio State has shown at times this year that they're not like this juggernaut team that a lot of people think they are. And their strength of schedule has been super soft. So many people have been questioning that.
I just don't think Penn State has the offense to stick with a very good defense. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think Penn State has the offense to go with a very good offense in Penn State. I don't trust Manny Diaz at all. If you're going to give up
if your name's Joe Will, aka me, and your two teams that you like, Penn State and Alabama, your coordinators are Manny Diaz, Pete Golding, Mike Yurcich, and Bill O'Brien. It's been a troublesome year for you.
I want Penn State to win this game. I don't think they're going to. I think Ohio State wins and covers.
Yeah, I also think Ohio State's going to cover. I think they win pretty handily, just because Penn State's played like one good team this year and they got destroyed. And like
Ohio State has a ton of weapons too.
Yeah, and because I mean they just got JSN back like a week ago too, 2 weeks ago, and he was arguably the first wide receiver off the board this year.
So going on to another one, Joe has tweeted about this one, and I want to buy the hype on it. I want to agree with Joe, but again, I can't. Florida versus Georgia versus number 1 Georgia. This game has not been close recently. It seems like the last 2 years, Georgia last year, the obvious national champions, they blew them out. Year before that, Florida and Kyle Trask blew out Georgia, and Georgia's down year. Georgia 22.5 point favorites. I think they cover.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This game is played in Jacksonville, right?
You're correct.
Jacksonville, Florida. So I think Georgia at home is a lot different team than Georgia like on the road. Obviously, you could say that about a lot of teams, but I haven't been all that impressed with Georgia this year. And I think Florida's been terrible this year too. But the one thing that I'll keep coming back to for Florida, offensively, they can score. And we've seen Georgia's defense is not necessarily as good as it was last year. You know, you lost all those guys. They still have plenty of talented players on their defense. But I think Florida's offense with Anthony Richardson and all the weapons that they have, who they've scored on everybody this year. I mean, scoring hasn't been an issue for Florida this year. It's been their defense. And I think in a game like this, I think Florida's defense will be up to the task. And I'm actually just going to go Florida with the flat-out upside over Georgia.
I believe in Anthony Richardson's supremacy. I believe he's going to throw for a blistering 200 yards, and Florida's going to lose by 22. Just barely squeak out the cover. I believe Anthony Richardson, for once this whole season, will throw for over 200 yards against a Power 5 team that is in Tennessee. I believe in him.
But do you think Georgia can hang with Florida if this game becomes a shootout? Georgia does not score a lot of points against teams that aren't like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Cupcake University.
I will admit,
Florida scores a lot of points.
Well, except they really don't. They dropped 33 against Tennessee, which was good. Then they dropped 16 against Kentucky, 29 against Utah.
Kentucky has a good defense.
Okay, but look who they're playing.
35, 24, 52, 33.
Again, look at the teams. 31 against
Tennessee.
South Florida.
They had 33 against Tennessee.
Okay, we had 49 under Bill O'Brien.
I'm not comparing them to Alabama. I'm saying they have.
It was against Eastern Washington. They scored 35 against LSU, lost by 10 at home. They scored 24 against Mizzou.
I'm telling you guys that Florida's going to score a lot of points in this game. I don't
How
know
many
if
is a
Georgia's
lot?
6, 7, 8, 9.
30.
Like double digits? Like a whole double digits? Look at Georgia. The teams against
I'm
them
just
this year.
saying.
3 points, 0 points, 7 points, 22
Go ahead.
points. Just gonna
What
put
teams?
22.
Who are those
10,
teams?
0.
Who are those
I'm just-
teams? Kent
what?
State scored 22. I mean, freaking
Yeah.
Kent State scored 22 points against them.
Oregon scored 3.
All right, well, we're
South
not going to talk
Carolina,
about Oregon.
Yeah,
power
well-
SEC team scored
How many
7.
of these teams have good offenses?
Auburn scored 10. I'm not saying they have
Auburn,
great offenses. I'm just saying
Auburn, Vanderbilt, Missouri, South Carolina, and Kent State. How many of those teams have offenses?
you
like
cannot
Florida's?
read those names and be like, oh, that's not a good defense, and then do the opposite for Florida and say, oh, this is a good offense. Like, it works
I'm
the
saying-
same both ways.
They haven't had to go against a team with a high-powered offense, and I haven't even brought up my main point, which is I think both Tennessee and Georgia this week kind of get caught with their hand in the cookie jar looking ahead to their matchup against each other next week, and kind of Tennessee less as much because they play at home. But I think in a neutral site, this is one of the bigger games. It hasn't been close the last couple of years, but I think Florida gets up for this game.
It's just
Okay, Joe, before we even go into the next game, if you think that Anthony Richardson is going to have 30 points against Florida, how many freaking points is Tennessee going to have? 70, 80? I mean, if the way you're talking, Tennessee's going to score 70 or 80 against Georgia.
I don't think Georgia's that good.
I just don't think Anthony Richardson can beat you with his arm. He had 400 yards in one game against Tennessee, and that was when Tennessee had like the worst ranked passing defense in the entire league. And then other than that, his season high is like 230 yards. And
He doesn't have to beat you with his arm, though.
right,
That's
but Georgia has a really good run defense, is my point.
I don't know. I mean,
I think they're going to make him beat them with his arm, and I just don't think he can.
Anyway,
we'll all. I mean, call me crazy. We'll agree to disagree
see.
on that. But
anyway,
I will say one last thing though. I will say, Joe, I the point I buy most for sure is like looking ahead to next week and then like losing it happens all the time with teams that play Alabama. They like drop a game the week before to some scrub team because they're looking forward to playing Alabama.
a la Ole Miss.
yeah, really quickly, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. I'm not even going to try to go into this one. I'm taking Oklahoma State money line.
I'll take Oklahoma State money line to pick 'em game. I know Adrian Martinez for Kansas State has been banged up.
I'm also picking Oak State money line. I mean, they started off down pretty big last week, but then they came back, right? And kind of showed that resiliency, and I think that they're probably the best team in the Big 12.
All right, then we got
TCU's the best team in the Big 12.
Oh, whoops. No, we'll finish. We're gonna finish with Kentucky, Tennessee. So we'll do Ole Miss at Texas A&M.
Ole Miss money line.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss bounces back. They struggled last week against an LSU offense that scores a lot of points. So I'll take Ole Miss money line as well. We got
two, and I'm kind of mad at Ole Miss because I was looking forward to us getting a win over number 7 because that would look good for our resume.
So you're taking all three of us have Ole Miss money line?
Yeah.
All right, number 7 TCU at West Virginia. TCU's been rolling, and West Virginia has struggled. But I kind of, for whatever reason, my gut's telling me to take West Virginia plus 7.5 points in this game. You'll see with my picks this week that I'm basically going out on a limb, being absolutely crazy with them. So this kind of builds off of the other two games we talked about that I've gone out on a limb on.
I'm gonna go TCU money line. I'm gonna play it safe.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree. I think I'm gonna pick West Virginia to cover. I think it'll be a close
Mountaineers.
game.
I said the Fighting Mountaineers.
Oh yes, sir.
Stanford, UCLA by a million. UCLA covers.
Yeah, I think UCLA covers too. There weren't a lot of games to pick from on here, so this is one that kind of just tossed in there. Been close in the past before, but Stanford not very good this year.
This is exactly the game that I think a team like Stanford will cover. I don't think they're going to win, but I think that this is exactly the game that there's such a big line, and then they bust out, a close loss, right? They keep it competitive, or even better yet, maybe we'll see like a good bad beat this week. Maybe last drive of the game, they bring it within 17. like Mississippi State scoring on the last play of regulation to where they didn't even get to kick the extra point. Wait, can I ask a question real quick?
No.
Has that always been a rule in college football, or was that just after the Vikings-Saints playoff game, the Minneapolis Miracle game?
Okay, we don't want to talk about that.
Well, because that was when they implemented the rule in the NFL that you don't have to do.
What are you in such a rush for? You got a hot date or something?
No, I don't want to hear Vikings Saints. That's very
well. I was just wondering because that was when the rule was implemented because the Saints went to the locker room, and the rule before was you still had to do the extra point even if it was a 3-point game and it couldn't change the outcome. And so they had to drag 11 Saints out from the locker room to line up on defense. Like Thomas Morstead came out and lined up at linebacker. And then they just took a knee because it didn't matter. The game was over. But after that, they just made it so that if it's inconsequential, you don't have to do it. So I don't know if that was always in college.
I think it's been in college as long as I can remember, but I'm not entirely sure.
But yeah, also how often does it happen,
That's true. Pitt at number 21 UNC. I'm going to go ahead and take UNC. I'll take UNC money line because sometimes these games are a little bit odd, these ACC ones.
I'll go Pitt. I'm going to take Pitt to win it.
Yeah, I'm also taking Pitt. I believe in Keenan Slovis supremacy.
Drake May, question mark?
Mac Brown. Hashtag Mac Brown.
Trouble on the Plains. Arkansas at Auburn. Auburn at home is a 3.5-point dog. Arkansas played pretty well last week. Auburn's a dumpster fire. They've got players transferring left and right. It's really just a competition between A&M and Auburn and who can be a bigger dumpster fire this year. I think A&M's in the lead, but Auburn's not too far behind.
Yeah, A&M's punter just transferred out.
I'm gonna go Arkansas. Arkansas money line.
I'm gonna go Auburn money line.
Ooh, big
I'm thinking Arkansas
guy.
to cover. I think Auburn's just kind of been a little sad this year. Like I like to make fun of Auburn, but it feels kind of like bullying at this point.
I feel bad too. It's like I don't have a younger brother.
Somehow Brian Harsin pulls a rabbit out of his hat.
Rabbit out of his ass
to keep his job. This is the win that keeps his job.
I think he
finger. It's the
does
finger.
something crazy and gets the win. Anyway,
it would be just like Auburn to do something like that. Number
Tyler
19.
Yeah, TJ Finley actually spins around, throws the ball backwards, and the refs are like, "That's an incomplete pass," just to rub it in Arkansas's face.
Tyler, who is your pick?
What?
Who is your pick?
Arkansas? I said Arkansas.
Oh,
I said Arkansas covers.
Clark has short-term memory loss. All right, number 19 Kentucky at number 3. Oh, Tennessee, we're just disappearing. Minus 12. I'm going to build on my lunatic ways this week, and I'm going to say that Kentucky covers the spread. 12 points is kind of juicy to me. Tennessee looking ahead to Georgia. Couple weeks removed from a big win against University of Alabama. I think Kentucky too defensively with Mark Stoops is they're not. It's not going to be a Pete Golding defense. They're well coached on defense and make adjustments. I'm a huge Will Levis fan, which is good because if the Commanders keep winning, I'll probably be stuck with Will Levis as my quarterback next year. So I think with Will Levis, Cavassier Smoke, Chris Rodriguez, I think they keep it close with Tennessee and they cover the spread. Tennessee's bringing out all their bags of tricks. I know they're doing the checkered field, and they've got their Halloween black and orange jerseys on, which I will say, as much as I hate Tennessee, love those jerseys.
Yeah.
So I'll go Kentucky to cover the 12-point spread.
I'm gonna go Vols big. I think that
the Vols are back.
I think that Bama's defense is statistically and talently better than Kentucky's. Only thing Kentucky has. Only thing Kentucky has better than us is defensive coordinators. I just don't think anybody. I don't think Kentucky. Let me say it like that. I don't think Kentucky is slowing down Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt. I think it'll be a little closer than
Come on, Clark. Take Kentucky to cover.
I think Tennessee covers.
I think Will Levis has that game, finally has the game that cements him as the number 3 quarterback, right? I don't think they're going to win. I think it'll be a close loss. I'm picking Kentucky to cover.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that Will Levis has the game that cement that all the scouts can go, okay, we haven't been
it helps against a horrible defense too.
Right, exactly. He's going to have a good game, and then I don't think he's going to be great in the NFL. But I think that this will be the game that cements him as the 3rd quarterback off the draft. And if he doesn't have a good game, then that's kind of a red flag, and maybe he won't have to worry about being the number 3 quarterback in the NFL draft.
Lots of good games this week. We went a little bit over our allotted time. Clock's antsy because he's got a date tonight, we'll let him. What's his Christopher Mobley scores it on? We'll let him go to his date. But
Joe, he just has a short attention span.
Oh,
not the only thing that we know. I'm only like 5'2".
Yeah, that's not the only thing that's short. What are you implying there, buddy?
That is not what I'm saying.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
You just need to get off there.
Thank you.
Just in case. I peep a lot of shit. I prefer to observe. I'm never following the herd or speak on what I done heard.
I almost timed that.